Hi, everyone. Welcome to the New Mexico Chat uh, channel. And I know some of you are probably expecting me to continue the story on Rod Hawks, what's happening to him, but we'll come back to that next week. What I decided to do is give this channel a little different flavor on the book part. The Some of what has come out has been that I should be sharing my journey of writing this first book, writing this first novel, and seeing, giving you behind the scenes glimpses of that. A lot of the times, the authors here on YouTube are, very well established, very well off. Um, where here I am not. I meet the criteria of the struggling first time writer, especially as I'm nearing retirement age and changing careers here. Uh, but so I'm going to kind of take you behind the scenes of my journey and sort of begin anew here. And then as we catch up, we'll start bringing Rod into it, and I'll talk about some of the characters in Rod Hawks that are, how I arrived at those characters. And so the first question is, have you ever really wondered, what shapes a story? What shapes a character? You know, Not just the plot. We all have things that occur in our life to be, wow, that'd be a great book. Um, but the forgotten moments, let me talk about some of those things. So join me as I pull back the curtain on my journey to where I'm at now. And, some of the things that in writing this episode has helped inspire me and breathe life into my novel and bring a reality to it. Um, some of those things would kind of shock you, maybe because of how long ago they occurred, but also just, you know, how long, you know, this story had been brewing within me, or the multiple stories, as I've talked about before, in my introductory video. So the most common question that I've been asked, by my friends who are like, so where did this idea come from? And this I did talk a little bit about in my introductory video. I was working in the city and traveling to work by train. There was an intersection where we frequently slowed down on the one of the reservations, and I always thought, wow, what would happen if something happened here? What if something happened here on the train? And that was kind of the beginning of the idea. And then one day we had to stop for an extended period of time because there's something when you ride a train, especially in a small rural area, it's called a train meet. So when a train's coming the other direction, it takes priority because it's probably, 100 cars from the major railroad. So that's sort of where, and an idea can come from anywhere. Um, I was sparked to one of the ideas that of another book that I'm working on it um, that is just it came to me while driving, and it was inspirational, and I almost felt like it, and I do believe it was the word of God telling me, write this book. You need to write this book. Um, and like many of us, I didn't listen, but I've kept that idea. I've kept that swirling in my brain. Another book that I've thought about is, I went down a rabbit hole one day on YouTube about the Tudors. And the story of Anne Boleyn sort of shocked me that somebody would be willing to just dispose of life and dispose of people so easily, like Henry VIII did. But we don't know about her childhood. But can we write something that's kind of fictional but realistic about it? Can we fill in some of those gaps? Who were her friends? Were people she met along the way? Who were people that she influenced without realizing it? And so that became the idea for that book. So for me, it was something personal. It was out of personal interest, is where some of these ideas began. So for my novel, it falls into the mystery category. It's, you know, there is a theme about overcoming adversity, overcoming injury, dealing with loss, um, dealing with respecting people. Um, and there were some things that I didn't realize till later, that some of the characters started becoming people that I knew, and that they were, well, I shouldn't say necessarily knew, but took on their personalities. Um, I can start in the beginning with Chief Holloman, big, tough, burly guy, played football in the South, played it in a historic black college or HBCU. Um, so there was that influence. And then that was the main picture I had in my mind of the individual, but then I added some character traits to them. Some of them didn't apply to the person I knew. Um, and then while trying to come up with this character, I came across somebody who was tough and spunky and, you know, and between what I saw in some dramas and between, like, became a visual of that person. And that became the character Hannah, the agent from Phoenix who transfers to the Albuquerque office. And so some of those character traits comes out in that individual. Some of the major, plot points fall around resolving loss, as you'll find out about Rod. Um, and just this overcoming determination. Some of what I found were things that were fears of my own. Um, and it wasn't until writing this that I realized that there were some deep seated resentments that I had, um, as the main criminal took on some characteristics of somebody who stole my lunch money when I was in junior high. And I also took on some of the characteristics of an individual who I got into a fight with once in junior high. It was a short lived fight, a couple punches. Um, but the character became those individuals. And like I said, there were some things that became revelations as I was thinking about this idea of the video. Other things that were kind of influencing me, I believe, was the train. I had a toy train like most boys my age in my generation. That was always like one of the big Christmas presents, and the typical, you know, Rockwell Christmas picture of a family. You put a train around the Christmas tree. And that was something you always set up every year at Christmas. Um, I always liked watching mysteries. The other thing that I didn't really think about, again, until shooting this video, was I used to watch Westerns with my father. And within those Westerns, there was always a train robbery or a train hijacking, something along those lines. So there's there's that. There was that unintended influence. So other things that I think that came out of this was the fear of death. We all have that. Um, and trying to avoid circumstances and fight for survival is an underlying theme of this book. That underlying theme of this is the fight for survival. And for me, this has occurred a few times throughout my life. As I almost drowned when I was a young child, or that's the story that gets told to me, around 2 or 3. I also had I used to work a shift that ended around midnight. I would go to the local convenience store, get something to eat after I got off work. And an underlying fear of going into that convenience store had always been, what happens if somebody robs it while I'm there? Or what happens if I walk in and find somebody who has been assaulted or killed or maimed, because of a robbery? What would I do? How would I respond? And I think some of those characteristics come out in Rod, some of those overall fears. And, those are things that I believe have been making this work very personal to me. And I find that, again, these were not things that were on the surface. These were things that came to light as I was reflecting on this video, as I was reflecting on my novel to prepare the script for this video, because there's just these things that we don't know about ourselves. And I think by writing and taking this journey and coming up with this story that I firmly believe in, and shout out to my mother-in-law, who's been, giving me some guidance and some editing to my work. We firmly believe in this story. We believe it is a good story. We believe it is something that you will want to read. So my next video, I'll talk a little bit more about these things as we get back to them, going back over Rod's. But this is more of a reflection of this has been my journey so far. And as many of you may remember from the introductory video, the journey began a long time ago, but actual pen to paper typing has always been a slow process, but it has definitely changed gears a little bit. It has become a little more rapid as the story has taken on this more personal meaning to me, and has taken on this character that were people that I knew, not necessarily, hey, this is this individual, but like I said, have become these characters pulling in traits of people that I knew. One of the other pieces of advice that have been given to me, and if you watch any author videos on Voice, you'll see it, is when you're writing, the main character's voice should not be your voice. It should be their voice. And that's something that I've had to actually look at, because am I writing this about me, this big fantasy of what I would want to be? Or am I writing this from the point of view of, this is Rod Hawks, this is his voice, and this is how he handled this situation? That's all I have for today. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you next week.